Now it is. It's on now.
I'm now.
No.
Yeah.
I don't want to. So let's just keep moving.
Okay. All right. First of all, I want to thank the board for giving me the continuance. Thank you. So basically what we're doing is we have a property, I'll just do this quickly.
The very first one.
Yeah. We have this property. So we did last time on halls. This is what it looked like. What it looks like now. And then the other one we're talking about is also next to Denman's store. So we've gone through the process and gotten to the point where the biggest concern seemed to be the wetland setback and the parking. Because initially what I had done is lay the parking kind of here in this location. So I went out and I hired Bedford Consultants out of Manchester to help me with a parking plan. So what they came up with is this design, which basically has the driveway coming around the back of the house, leaving the front of the house with the rural character that we're trying to do like we did on the other projects, so that it looks like basically a single family home from the front. And we got all of our parking out here. There was handicap parking out front, and that was closest proximity to our handicap accessible unit in the building, and that's why we did that. And across here, you can see I had Gold Environmental lay out the wetlands for me, and there was also a letter included which talked about the distances for the Little River for purposes. So basically, I think with the topography the way it is, and the parking lot the way it is, the plan is basically to have the watershed this way, which will have it kind of the disseminate the longest distance away from the wetlands down this direction, because that's how the flow of the property already goes as it is. Susan walked it with me before, and we discussed that. And then basically what happens is our parking ends up, we have a 75-foot setback that we're trying to achieve, and we're able to do that through all the parking. That's kind of shown here on the plan.
So I'm going through some the minutes that we had from a previous meeting. Just want to touch through a couple of points, really just for record. But there's discussions on the multifamily conversion versus new multifamily. I think we've gotten our opinions that this does qualify for multifamily conversion. We had asked you to look at the parking, so we appreciate it. I think the parking will be a lot better from the road face.
Aesthetic, yeah.
And I think we appreciate that there are accessible units here that can be easily accessed by the parking spaces that would be up front, the one or two that are up front.
Yeah, we put the right up closest to the parking.
We had also asked that the well radius is about the well radius being in the flood zone. Is that an issue? I don't know if you had any
I had
response to
David
those.
look at that, and it was fine basically on the well radius. Also, this plan was reviewed by Jim Joe from Go Environmental Services.
We had asked about the driveway permit from New Hampshire DOT.
Right.
Has that been applied for or
No, my
requested?
thought was that I didn't want, to be honest with you, I didn't want to pay for it until I got this part okayed, so I'd be fine with it. This is okay, that would be contingent on me getting that permit.
Yeah, we would make that as a conditional,
Okay.
condition on the approval if the board so goes that way.
Okay.
Those are the primary things that we had previously asked for. So I just want to open it back up to the board to see if there are other concerns now that we have the parking plan.
What I noticed, Mr. Chairman, is that since the last time we saw Mr. Kane, the wetlands to the north part of the lot have been reclassified into very poorly drained soils,
Okay.
which require a 75-foot setback. And some of that comes into the proposed plan for the driveway. And I just wanted to make note of that.
And we have in our regulations 25 feet from, or 75 feet from parking.
Right, yeah,
But-
From parking, yes.
To Susan's point,
Yes.
because I saw that immediately too when I got the plan back, but when Bedford Design explained it to me, it's to the parking, not to the driveway. So this, because you can see, that's why they put all the distances here, so I wasn't trying to hide that. So that you can see that our parking is well beyond the 75 feet around the driveway. These are the distance from the edges of the driveway.
So can I suggest, whether it's premature or not, that when the driveway is constructed,
Yeah.
that you put in a little slope, so the drainage will come to the south part rather than,
Right, so it runs like that way, Susan.
yes.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah,
away from the
okay.
wetland. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, this, you can see the topography lines here, and my plan is basically to follow the topography lines so that we work our way down. And you and I had discussed this, and I already talked to the site person, but we're actually gonna be installing slate berm on the backside too.
Oh, good.
So it'll
Just
all.
to intercept some water.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
so any water that comes off of here will be funneled down in this direction.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other concerns, comments for the applicant?
And you would also said, Mr. Kane, that you would be taking care of the driveway and would be using a minimal amount of salts and everything.
Correct, yeah, I use Tenny Landscaping in town,
Mhm.
and he does all of my properties, and typically just uses sand, unless we have like some scenarios that require.
Yeah. Cleats or something.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, golf spikes, Boltons.
Thank you.
Seeing no other comments from the board, we do have a public hearing that is continued and open. So anybody who wants to speak to, for, or against this application specifically, please come on up and state your name.
Sam Bernard, I chair the Conservation Commission. I just have one question that just came to me just recently. Is there going to be one
Two systems.
sitting either very close to or
Actually,
Great. Thanks, Sam. Anybody else have any comments regarding this application? One more time, anybody else having any comments? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. I'll bring it back to the board for any further discussion. And if there isn't any further discussion, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the application from Paul Kane, owner of Kane Investments LLC, the minor site plan, case 18-003 SIT, with the condition of the New Hampshire DOT driveway permit for the change in the driveway location, and the berms being in place to protect the waterway.
I second.
There's motion and a second by Sue.
Very professional, but, yeah.
Motion second. Any other discussion? Those in favor indicate aye.
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 Those opposed? That's unanimous.
thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Thanks
Mr.
for your
Kane.
diligence on that.
Have a good evening.
Case is 18004 SIT. This is an application from SBA Towers. Terrace Search. They're requesting relocation of a wireless communication tower on Pike Road. Property is located at 175 Old Turnpike Road and identified as map 3 lot, cut off. What's the lot number?
lot number is 06.
Oh, 06.
Yep, 0006-01. Placed on the agenda. Great. For the record, if you just want to state your name and indicate your organization and give us a little bit of information about this application.
My name is Timothy Green. I'm here on behalf of SBA Towers. My firm is Terrace Search. Wireless telecommunication facilities are here tonight are a site plan approval for relocation of an existing cell tower from 165 Turnpike Street to 175 Turnpike Street. Special permit for this also, here tonight for the site plan approval. Existing tower on 65 Turnpike Street, trying to approximately 195 feet tall, would not be painted or lit, would be underneath the FAA requirements for painting and lighting. And there are 4 existing wireless carriers on the tower at 165, and it's expected that they would move over to 175 also. Sprint, T-Mobile, Verizon Wireless, and AT&T are all tenants on the tower.
And can you give a little bit of description of how that site is, where it is, how tall the existing tower is relative to the tower?
So the existing, they're approximately, I think as the crow flies, about 300 feet away from each other, from where the old one is to where the new one is. They are on 2 different lots, though. Makes sense. And it's a self-supporting tower. The existing one is actually approximately 195 feet tall. The new one would be approximately 199 feet tall, each of them below 200 feet. They would be capable of carrying multiple tenants, at least 5. There's only 4 major carriers at this point, but if someone else were to come along. And there's already existing vehicular access to the site, so you wouldn't have to put in a new driveway. 100 feet from the side, 219 from the rear, and 140 feet from the front of the lot. But it's also about approximately, I believe it's about 400 feet from the road itself. The compound would be 100 feet, the leased area would be 100 feet by 100 feet. The compound itself would be 70 by 70, and that's to include the individual tenants. Each of them would have a prefabricated shelter or equipment cabinets on the ground. Just gravel, clear it out. The tower has the concrete footings. The actual design hasn't been done yet, but either it would just probably be a mat foundation. Sits there, provides coverage.
It looks like the access is there to the existing tower. This would also, the existing access would also provide access to the new pad.
2 different, so the existing tower isn't part of the equation right now. The proposed tower has access to an existing gravel driveway, so you wouldn't have to cut in a new driveway.
So I'm confused, are these not on the same,
They're not on the same lot.
okay, so it's the drawing that you have shown with the lot, there's no existing tower on that
There
one.
is no existing tower, that's proposed. So if you go to zoning plan Z1, that shows the
Yeah, where is the existing tower relative to
existing tower
this?
would be to the east. So if you're looking at that quad map right there, you can see it's pretty much going due north. To the east is where the existing tower is, on 165 Turnpike Road, then 175 heading west.
Okay, it's just not labeled on this plan.
Correct.
So it's hard to know where it is.
It would be to the right.
The right is,
If you were looking at the
So
map,
it's
go to the
east-
right.
east of
Kind
the-
of like where the stamp is. Where the say there's New Hampshire stamp on the engineering drawings, you need to go that way. That's where the existing tower is. The new tower is moved west.
How much gain in elevation is there to the topography from the old site to the new site?
I think it's under 10. It's minimal. It's not the movement isn't designed, honestly, to gain more height or less height. It's relatively same graded area out there.
what's the reasoning for the new tower?
Well, you probably know better than me in Nottingham, but there's some issues with 165 Turnpike Road in the past, and SBA is not in a position to lose the site in any way, shape, or form, and neither are the tenants, and they need to do what they need to do to make sure that there is always coverage in Nottingham and the surrounding area. So there's no guarantee that the tower would stay there under the current situation on the ground. I'm not real privy to what those issues are. I know there's been some bankruptcy proceedings and stuff like that. there's some issues there. There's no guarantee that it's gonna stay, therefore need to take proactive measures to make sure that if there were an issue, that there's a place for those carriers to go to
So
continue.
SBA doesn't own the existing tower?
SBA owns the existing tower, and SBA has the lease at 165 Turnpike. SBA will own the new tower, and SBA will own will have the lease at the new location.
But they're
However,
two different lots with two different owners?
two different lots with two different owners, yes.
Okay, so the problem isn't with the old tower, the problem is with the old lot.
Yes, tower's fine. Tower's fine.
Yeah, actually, the tower is located on the former USA Springs site, correct?
Yes,
And the town owns that land. We seized it by tax deed, so
Yes.
there's no immediate threat to that existing tower. There doesn't seem to be any business advantage to moving this tower.
well, I'm not privy to the conversations between the bankruptcy as well as where the lease goes and the easement. If the easement went with I don't know anything about it.
It's not a valid reason.
Is there an increase in,
Coverage, it's roughly the same. Not really any increase in
would there be any, Nottingham? There are a lot of benches.
anything taller than painted and lit, and that becomes a much different issue. You've got a red beacon at night or a white flashing beacon all day, and it's striped.
Oh, it could,
This does not, but once you and we're here for site plan approval. I don't know. It'd be more for the zoning board of exception, but. Close a new site.
I think the town will be willing to take the rental from SBA.
There's been some ongoing negotiations that obviously I can't talk about publicly,
Ah,
but.
let me just get some clarification. Joanna, why is it becoming here before zoning?
Because of timing. Zoning's meeting is next week, and they were itching to get here first.
Okay, because we can't act until we have the special exceptions from the zoning. We can't take any action on it. So this would be, we definitely would have to accept the application first, which we haven't done yet, so, and we'd have to hold the public hearing. And the application that has been submitted is lacks some information that we would require as a site plan application. Contours, elevations, those sort of things are not shown on this drawing. It would be helpful to have how the location of the existing tower
Okay,
relative to
sure.
this tower. And I guess since this is, what's the roadway that, is it just a driveway?
Just a
What-
driveway.
What is on this property right now?
Currently, there's a residence.
So in effect, the driveway for the residents would become the access
Yes,
to the tower.
yes.
And the residence is gonna go away?
No, residence stays there.
Oh, okay.
Once it's built, it's just regular vehicular access. There's nothing fancy that you need. It's not, like, I mean, if you're gonna be doing some construction up there,
You had mentioned, on are these any structure that's on property?
no, none of those are to the property lines.
House to-
I can get that if that's something you'd like to know. They're also the owner of, they'd be the leaseholder, so I mean, it's not a, they know exactly where it's going.
That was a concern. Things would be in case it fell over or something.
Sure.
Did you say this was a gravel driveway?
Dirt.
How come it says asphalt?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, that one, the old one is gravel, I'm sorry. The existing one is, the new one is asphalt, yes.
I'll go to the,
Existing one is. This doesn't abut.
Yeah, yeah.
Get the acre.
Total property, 5.01 acres.
The existing tower.
And a new tower, it's not,
But it's the same. Is this 10 feet apart? Higher? Any other comments from the board? Questions? At this point, I wouldn't consider this as a complete site plan application package. It's missing a number of those. So we would have to continue with this process. I don't know. And you think you could get package?
Stuff, I mean, that's not, none of that stuff is incredibly difficult to get, but when is the next meeting date?
That's in 2 weeks.
2 weeks? Would we have a hearing on the 20th?
Yeah, right.
Well, the
by that next Wednesday, essentially. Right?
Yeah, in order to get the package in to prior to next week.
Topography,
That's possible.
location of new tower, location of the
House.
house.
Butters?
I mean,
This is
we have a
listed.
whole list in our regulations of information.
And I've checked on,
Butters is marked up.
They're not on.
It's just not printed. Okay.
yeah, but it's, yeah, sure.
Please.
So they're in the application.
I see, thank you.
I think they are.
Where are we?
It's not one,
Yeah.
Gillespie or something like that, right? Brett and Stephanie.
I see.
Is that their house? Do you want the abutters shown as well, Sue? Is that what you're
Oh, I'm
requesting?
looking at, HC1.
Town of Nottingham
I'm assuming
just
that
doesn't have it.
Realty Trust. Agreement.
Yep. Okay, so that would be the next course of action. So that we can fully accept it, so we'd have to vote to accept the application, which we won't be. And then it will open up, we will have a public hearing at that time, so we won't hold a public hearing this evening. We'll be able to hear that at the next meeting.
I mean, just for clarification, is it in, because of, what part is not complete? Because it's not in the bylaw that you have to have the distance to the house necessarily, unless you wanted to say that's in the bylaw, I just said that, all structures have to be there.
But yeah, we have to know where all the structures are on the lot.
Okay, all right,
The
I'm just trying to
drawing-
make sure if we're
Yeah, it's in our,
exactly missing.
it's in our regulations that you
I
have
mean,
to show.
we've got a map out there, I believe that the house is, but that's fine, I can clarify it.
We don't know where, it's not labeled as a house, I don't know where, is it a house? There's nothing on the plan that says what those lines are,
Okay.
and it's incomplete. Application needs to be- So I would entertain a motion to continue the acceptance.
Yeah, we didn't accept it.
No, but
Continue.
we would
Yeah.
continue the application acceptance.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we continue the acceptance, this case, for, I gotta find where we are again here. Case 18-004 SIT from SBA Towers until the November 28th, 2018 meeting at 7 PM with submissions due no later than 11/21 to the planning office. New plans to show contours, show existing tower and scale plan, show where the house is and butters.
All the butters on the butters list.
Pardon me,
all the butters on the abutters list.
to the property, whatever you have.
Well, they're on there already, so, but you want, if there's another one, because we did 300 feet, we need just do abutters. So we've got the abutters.
We
in the
just
plan.
need a plan that has a direct abutters.
Okay, well, that's on there, I just want to make sure that
Okay.
I'm not missing something.
No, just a plan showing the direct abutters. We
Okay,
don't-
direct
We don't
abutters.
need all 300 feet.
Okay.
Right. Gary, second.
Those motions. Those in favor indicate aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The next one.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Gary?
I beg your pardon. May I ask a question of the gentleman before?
Not at this time.
Okay.
It's not a public hearing. You can, if you want to exit and he wants to excuse himself, you can talk to him in the hall, but other than that, we're having a meeting. Next thing on the agenda is...
I'll step up for a minute.
Okay, sure. You're excused. Case 18005DR, application from Billicus Homes for an open space development subdivision. This is a subdivision design review. The intent is to subdivide tax map 6, lot 22, into 20 individual lots. The property is located off of Old Pike Road in Nottingham, New Hampshire. And is there a representative from the applicant?
Yes, sir. My name is Christopher Berry. I'm with Berry Surveying and Engineering.
Great, thank you. Could you step us through what you're proposing at the time? And just so the public knows, this is a design review hearing, and this is not for an approval at this time. This is when a landowner or an applicant would like to come in and ask questions of the board, and we can get a little bit more information. This design review helps guide the applicant into coming up with a full application that's complete. At this time, when we have subdivisions that are larger than, say, 5 lots, there's a significant amount of time and effort that goes into the engineering and the surveying of these. So we have a process in the design review that allows applicants to come in early on and describe the intent of the subdivision, to rule out any other significant changes that might happen, so they can take into account those during their design. So this is a non-binding discussion. I will, if people are interested, we don't require a public hearing, but it is to the applicant's benefit and to the board's benefit. If there's some information that a butter has or some other information relevant to this, I will have there's be an opportunity to talk about that in a meeting forum here tonight. So with that, if you could just describe that, and I see are there a lot of extras of these?
Yeah, there's a few.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there anybody from the audience or public that might have an interest in this case? There is another map here. There's a few here, you can hand them around. Just happen to have extras.
So again, Mr. Chairman, my name is Christopher Berry. I'm with Berry Surveying and Engineering, and I represent the landowners and the applicant for this evening. As the chairman pointed out, we thought it would behoove us to come before the board, talk about the property in general, talk about the areas that we'd like to develop, and then the process that we'd like to go through to develop the site. So, the summer of this last year, the applicant asked that we conduct an existing conditions survey of the project site. Site is located along Route 4, which is at the bottom of the plans provided, just west of the intersection of Hall and Smoke, and abuts the Barrington Town Line. The back of the property is the Barrington Town Line. So we've conducted an on-site survey of the entire parcel, approximately 60 acres, just shy of.
And we've had Stony Ridge Environmental do a number of different things on site. The first is they've done a wetlands assessment and analysis. And as you can see on the plans, there's a large wetland that's centralized to the parcel. There are small wetlands that feed down into the large wetland. In addition to the wetlands analysis, we've had them start on site-specific soils mapping, formerly known as HIS mapping. So we've gone out and done a series of test pits to determine where ledge is and determine where the good soil is versus the poor soil, so that we can properly site where the roadway should go based on environmental impacts and where potential housing should go or can go on the parcel, again, based on seasonal high water table depths and ledge. I think as we all know, Route 4 is a DOT-controlled access roadway. We would be entitled to 3 total driveway permits as part of a conventional subdivision design. And so what we've put together this evening is a presentation on what a conceptual yield plan for the whole parcel would look like. We've got a large cul-de-sac that comes in. The subdivision regulations require no longer than a 2,000-foot cul-de-sac be proposed. So we have a large cul-de-sac here proposed, and then a smaller one that would be 2 curb cuts off of Route 4, and then we had, in this concept, we didn't have any individual driveway locations coming off of Route 4. Additionally, this plan shows the steep slopes in relation to the proposed lot and road plan. Please keep in mind when I discuss this plan, I'm discussing a conventional subdivision layout, conventional frontages, conventional lot sizes, things of that nature. But what I'll discuss in a couple of minutes is an open space subdivision that we're looking to pursue with the board. Additionally, to the wetlands and soils areas, we are showing the 25% steep slopes, so that we can show what the buildable envelopes would be, so that we can meet the 30,000 square foot buildable envelopes, which would be a reduction you'd have a reduction in the steep slopes, the soils, and the wetland setback. So those areas are shown also. Keeping in mind that we would have a couple of crossings, wetland crossings for the proposed yield plan. We have a crossing at the entrance and then a crossing halfway through the parcel, and then a small wetland impact out towards the Barrington town line. To the west of the property is state-owned land that's owned by the Dam Bureau. We've actually been in contact with the Dam Bureau about this project. We've met with their survey group over there to help determine the limits of where they own versus where we own. The parcel to the east is privately owned. I believe there's a cell phone tower on that parcel as well. That's unclear to me, but I believe it is. And then again, the parcels to the back in Barrington are single-family residential homes. So there was a subdivision that took place, I believe, in the 70s or 80s, and those are single-family homes against the rear of our property. So what we'd like to do with a yield of 20 units, which would further be vetted through the subdivision process, is a subdivision that looks similar to this. We're here tonight to gain input and feedback from the board on this layout or layouts that might be better suited for the land that the board would be inclined to review further. But just to start, we'd like to keep as much of the central wetland open as possible and reduce the amount of privately owned wetlands. We find that when we do these types of subdivisions, when we can remove the lot lines from the wetland areas to the extent practical, it reduces incursion into the buffers and into the wetland areas. So we're trying to reduce the amount of privately owned wetlands on this plan. There's still room for improvement in this plan. This isn't what we consider the final layout. We could shrink this area down to reduce the amount of impact in that particular area. The green is shown as the proposed development zone. The red is areas that contain wetlands, wetland buffers, and steep slopes. So I just wanted to bring the board's eye to that location. And then the blue shown on the plan is open space that would be unencumbered by wetlands, buffers, and steep slopes. Those two colors are important because your open space subdivision regulations require a certain percentage be left open, over 50%, and then a certain percentage of that be unencumbered by wetlands, steep slopes, and buffers. So again, we're looking at a yield of 20 units, 2 private cul-de-sacs off of Route 4. We reduce the amount of steep slope impact by roadway by having a subdivision in this format. We reduce the wetland impact, just one small crossing against Route 4, so you wouldn't cross this second wetland. You obviously increase the amount of open space that's not encumbered by privately owned landowners, and you reduce the distances, or increase the distances to the private residents that are at the backside of the property. We have not applied for a DOT permit yet. We want to make sure that we're moving in the right direction with a road layout, a subdivision layout. After that, we would finalize environmental studies conducted by Stony Ridge Environmental. We would conduct a traffic study so that we know the amount of volume on Route 4, and then the turning movements of the proposed subdivision left and right, so that we could apply for driveway permits with NHDOT. And then final test pitting for the subdivision process, so that we can show the 2 test pits that are required in 4,000 square foot leaching areas, where proposed wells and well radiuses would lie, things of that nature. So with that, this is a fairly large project. It's a large parcel anyway. 20 overall units isn't a large project necessarily for us, but it is a larger project, I think, for the area. And so we thought the design review process would feather out some of the details that the board would like to see further. Maybe there are sensitive areas that we need to pay more attention to, require further study. So we'd like to know those things so that we can move forward with our project.
Thank you. Yeah, so when we were talking about yield plans and then an open space development, the yield plan really gives the number of lots in a conventional subdivision, which means that all of the properties are 2 acres plus, setbacks, et cetera. And I guess in the yield plan, I just have a question, is how long is that cul-de-sac that's there?
I believe it's 1,700 feet.
17? Okay.
We ensured. So to that point, Mr. Chairman, what level of detail when we come back, what level of detail does the board like to see on a yield plan? I would, how about I explain how I would typically present the yield plan, and then you can correct me if
Sure.
I'm incorrect. So we would do an overall scale. The contours that we show, they're 5-foot contours currently. They're survey 5-foot contours, but I would do an overall scale drawing, much like I've seen there, probably presented here with more detail. Then I would present multiple cuts, just so you could get a better feel for the lots, the lot sizes, setbacks, and things of that nature.
Multiple cuts in as far as?
Multiple plan sheet cuts. So instead of having a 100 scale plan or 200 scale plan, you'd have 40 or 50 scale plans. So you could scale it, you could dimension, you'd see the dimensions, things like that on there, so we could prove out if we were to move forward with that conventional subdivision, that it wouldn't necessarily need waivers and things like that.
Yeah, that's acceptable, I think, to our board, because we've worked on very small scale plans before, and it's helpful if we can blow up an area, you know, specifically relative to steep slopes and the wetland setback. It would be helpful that if those plans do have either coloring or cross-hatching of steep slopes, the 25%, and wetlands. And then certainly we'd like to see the setbacks to those on that same yield plan. Similar to how you have it here, I think it's, what you're showing is good.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or two? I'm looking at a couple of these lots, and personally, I would like to see where you would fit in a building envelope.
Are we looking at?
I'm looking at the conventional, because that's how you determine how many lots you can have when you move into open space. So I'm looking at Lot 5, which is over on the left. It has a lot of wet, and we have a colored area that shows a relatively small buildable area, but I don't know how big that is.
It's 34,000, it's 35,000 square feet.
Buildable lot?
Buildable area.
Okay, I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah,
Just
it's-
upland right
It
here.
just says upland, so is that the buildable area?
In the yellow, or in our yellow?
Somebody's colored your plan.
Yes.
Yes, it helps a lot.
So, that area, the total contiguous buildable, total contiguous property area is everywhere inside the setbacks, because that's the way your regulations read. So that 30,000 square feet needs to be outside of wetland setbacks, side front setbacks, and steep slopes. So that 30,000 square feet is
Okay.
the yellow area.
Okay.
Just keep in mind, I think we're looking at a 120 scale plan, so,
Okay.
yeah.
My next question is, have you tested the soils as to whether they are poorly drained or very poorly drained?
The soils shown, the wetlands shown on site are the poorly drained soils.
Okay,
As part of the site-specific soils mapping, I would surmise that the center of this wetland will have very poorly drained soils. And then I believe that there's an increased buffer to that also.
by the way, this is the Little River that drains out of Mendham's Pond, and it's a third-order stream. So it's not really a wetland, it's really a river. And did you say who the abutter was to the west? I was.
That's the dam bureau.
Oh, okay. I missed that one, thank you. I think that was, oh, one more question. How would you access Lot 10? Would you need another curb cut to get into Lot 10? Or are you gonna be coming over wetlands for the driveway?
I'm sorry, in my presentation, I didn't think we would have a third curb cut. That would be a third curb cut on Route 4. That would be our third.
And you would anticipate that the DOT would allow you to do that?
Yes, so we'd be permitted 3. And again, this is the yield plan we're talking about. We'd be permitted 3 by right, as long as we met the criteria for 400 feet of site distance in each, all-season site distance in each direction. A couple of other minor criteria which we would meet, but yes, we would be able to receive the 3 curb.
Thank you.
And do you feel that the locations right now for both the yield plan and the open space plan would provide those 400 feet?
Yes.
Okay.
We've actually run, based on the 85th percentile speed of Route 4, we've run what we call intersection site distance, and determined that we would have over 600 feet of site distance in each direction.
Is there a passing zone in this location?
Not in front of the project site.
Thanks. Any correction or questions or comments
On the,
from other members?
one on the cul-de-sac regulation, just curious around the maximum pitch of the cul-de-sac. We have a maximum of 3%, so just want to make sure we call that out, given that there are areas of steep slope on the property.
Understood. So with that being said, the design that we have really become fond of is, that 3% talks about the road profile, as you're driving along the profile. We've become fond of super elevating that to the inside, so the stormwater's captured in the center and treated. Is that a design that, most towns now don't have mounded cul-de-sacs because of stormwater problems. this would be slightly depressed and so that the stormwater is captured, treated, and then sent on its merry way essentially.
In the open space plan.
Well, the final engineering plans is really, so yeah, in the open space design,
Yeah.
I would propose to super elevate the center of the cul-de-sac. So as you're driving along, your cars, you're driving almost like I don't want to use the word racetrack, but, you know, you're super elevated to the inside, so that stormwater flows to the inside.
And will that center be grassed in?
Yes.
Kind of like a well for the water to collect in?
Yes, and we've been, this is probably something I would work out with the road agent, but we've been using these as treatment cells so that they can also re-infiltrate stormwater, treat stormwater right at the source. That way we're not creating point sources of discharge.
Keeping with the stormwater theme here, I know that on the open space plan, you've kind of got a dedicated lot for stormwater management, 2 of them. Don't see that for the yield plan. What would be the plan for stormwater management on the yield plan?
We didn't take the time to plan that out. If that's something that you'd like to see, we can. It's gonna be at the low points, so it'll be in a very similar location as on the open space design. Most of the project site either drains to the center of the wetland or drains down. You know, the general movement of contour is this way. So stormwater would be collected and treated basically at the low points in the subdivision. But we could key those areas out and show them on the.
Only to the point that if it affects the yield.
Sure.
So if not looking for a design, but just a placeholder for where that would be.
Sure.
Thanks. Just explain it again, this is a question from a board member that wasn't able to come, that had some review comments. Are the 25% slopes shown?
Those are the hatched areas on the yield plan, and then those are also shown on the open space plan in red.
Okay, so the red areas?
So on the open space plan that the open space subdivision design that we provided, the red areas incorporate the steep slopes, the buffers, and the wetland areas. So if you notice, there's a wetland line inside, then there's a buffer line, and some of the red kind of comes up the slope here, or up into the blue area. Those are the areas of steep slopes.
So there's no steep slopes within the conventional lots?
Well,
I mean, I'm sorry, the open
Yep.
space lots.
that's right. One of the main focuses of this design is to avoid those areas if possible.
Contours look pretty tight along the west edge. Yeah,
Here, so that west edge, there's no 25% slope there, but again, that would be the rear of a lot. That would be approximately 250 feet.
I'm sorry.
I'm just looking at, so the yield plan we colored in the 20%.
There are areas of 25%, but there's a specific call out of not subject to conservation district, but I'm not familiar if that's an exclusion in open space plan or not.
Okay. Just to make sure your yield plan doesn't include the 25% with the calculation for the buildable lot.
Such as Lot 2, that has a lot of 25% slope.
Right, so what if I'm scaling it right, then this would be the 48,000
Upland.
square feet.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
usable, okay.
Yeah.
I think it would be helpful when we return, what I'll do on the yield plan is for each lot, I'll key out the total area,
Mm-hmm,
the area of 25% slopes, the area of the setbacks, and area of wetlands. And that way you can sort of tally them all up to reach the same numbers that we've concluded.
okay,
on the plans.
thank you, that would be
The
helpful.
key number for us is the buildable lot.
Right. And the 30,000 square feet, that's.
Yes.
Yes, right. Yeah.
What would become of the open space land remaining?
We've done it a number of different ways in a number of different communities. The most popular way to do it now is to create an HOA. It's privately held. It's signed so that along the perimeter of each lot in the subdivision, as well as along the perimeter of the abutting boundaries, it's signed with a special placard every 50 feet or so to discourage people from utilizing that space privately. And then it's monitored by the internal HOA.
So does that mean that these lots the access to these lots will be private? The cul-de-sac roads will be private roads?
No, we're not proposing that those be private, but the conservation subdivision requires that somebody hold and manage the open space. The best effective way to do that is through group ownership.
And that'll be written into the deeds of these properties?
There would be an HOA bylaws, an HOA document, brief, because it doesn't need to be large. And then each one of these lots would be subject to that. We've done it a more simplistic way before, where each one of these owners owns 1/20th interest in the open space, but it doesn't really define what can and can't happen with that open space. And so we found that in keeping with the way the ordinances are written for open space subdivisions, that we can take a lot of those interests and place them in the bylaws and in the HOA so that private landowners don't have to be familiar with the ordinance to know what can and can't happen on. It's part of their chain of title, part of their deeds.
Yeah,
And that's the way that has been done previously?
That's how.
Through here, we have done those that way, the HOA method of having that as a part of it. I know there's other large open space subdivisions that we have in town that do that same thing. I'm not sure how well that works. But that's how it's been done in the past. I'm curious how it does work.
Don't know whether it works or doesn't work.
Well, I think the issues are the homeowners association. It's more with that, because then it becomes how that is operated, how that is voted on. It could be simply dropped off pretty quickly, and then there's no real management there's no responsibility, even though it's written into each one's deeds. If in fact they don't have an organized homeowners association, then it just evaporates the responsibility. Even though it's written in, it evaporates, and the town doesn't have any part of it.
Has the town, we actually discourage our applicants from doing this oftentimes, but has the town ever held an easement for the same purpose?
We have conservation easements for some of these subdivisions, right? I'm looking at you, Sue.
yeah,
We've
you are.
done that.
Well, it's a lot of work, and we have a big one that we monitor every year. And they're supposed to have a homeowners association, but they don't, because it's just easier not to. But in order to protect the integrity of the Little River watershed, we do that. And it would be nice if somebody in that development would step up and say, hey, I'll organize something and think over this. But it might just come down to the town jobbing it out, and paying someone to do that.
So that's
Okay.
that's some discussion that, we can have going forward on the management and how that would set up.
And I've done 20 or 30 of these my young career, so I could bring in a couple of different examples. We've just done one in Raymond, New Hampshire, it's very, very similar to this. And we struggled with this same conversation, whether it be HOA or the Conservation Commission taking easement, and how's that funded, and who walks the land, and so we've done it both ways. I'll bring you some examples.
Helpful. Any other questions from the board? I would like to open it to the public to see if there's some comments there. Yeah. So if you would just, if there are some comments, please step forward, state your name. I'd appreciate it if you directed the questions to me, and I can let the applicant answer. That just helps out in making sure the conversation's with all of us.
Yes. Sean Milligan. I'm a resident of Barrington, that is abutting the property. And I was just curious if I could see the other map.
Yeah. You want to just turn it into the conventional?
Oh, sure.
It's not color, but,
So what are we proposing to build? The conventional or this colored, fine color?
the applicant has to prove a conventional subdivision will work before we would allow an open space. Because the open space allows smaller lots, and obviously more open space.
Right.
So it is the applicant and landowner's option to submit the application one way or the other. So if they wanted to do a conventional route, they could, because it would meet all of the town's requirements for it.
Right.
But for the benefits that have been shown of having open space available, smaller lots, et cetera, it's usually the applicant wants to go with an open space
Right.
subdivision. There's less road to build, it's a little cheaper initial development. So it is their option to do it, but once their application is made, it needs to be made in one way or the other.
There's just a significant difference between the two maps.
It usually is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And,
What do you feel about the conventional one, or vice versa? Do you have a preference, or is there concerns about one over the other?
the proximity due to the existing property lines, of course, which anybody would be. In no way would I stand in front of future tax base for Nottingham. I know that's an excellent piece of real estate to build. I certainly appreciate the space that I have behind me, but
You're a direct abutter then?
direct. Now, my only concern would be, now, for the record, would be the aquifer sustaining the additional wells. As it is now, you know, from mid-June, late June, through September, the current aquifer, with a few neighbors that I've talked with, you know, minimally sustains our needs. You try to water your lawn or something during the summer, and the wells do not recover well, or adequately. So I would just like to think that would be taken into consideration prior to, now this plan that everybody has received certainly shows a substantial setback, 400 to 500 feet, I would say.
Yeah, that's one of the added benefits of one of the benefits of having an open space is that there's typically less lawn to be irrigated. There's less private-owned land that can get cut, filled, et cetera. So that is one of the benefits of an open space.
It's still 20 homes, though.
Yep.
Are utilizing it regardless of lawn size.
Yeah, pulling up water from the same aquifer.
Correct. Yeah, so it may be less lawn to water, but not everybody waters their lawns. but everybody uses water.
Right.
Yeah, and that's why the yield plan is important, because that's how many lots there would be that this landowner would have the right to develop.
Exactly, and, you know, with that plan, if you were to have a lot of open green space or a large lawn that you like to take care of, I think it would certainly put a strain. Like I say, I would prefer that, or like to see that study.
Okay.
Moving forward.
Okay, thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the, sorry, I'm gonna have this woman who raised her hand before.
My name is Ruth Lamontagne. We also were pictured here as a butter. Our home is the closest to these proposed developments. I had two concerns. One was that the lots are very small, looks like a quarter of an acre, and I was wondering the size of the home. I know on Long Pond Road in Barrington, just up the ways from here, there's some extensive similar things there, and I didn't know what the town would look into the benefits as opposed to the problems that might have developed because of this. I know at Vendham's, there was the fire at the boathouse, and two of the individuals that had started the fire, I don't know if this is official, but the thought is they were disgruntled people from across the bay. I don't know the politics. I just know that a small development like this, I'm not quite sure exactly what it's like, what happens. Really not sure if this is a good thing. But my other question is a little bit bigger, and that's that we bought our home in '91, and at the time, Route 4 was not very wide. And it was before cell phones, and every week I had someone knocking at my door with a severe accident on 4, where Hall Smoke, and Route 4R, and it was traumatic. And we all know at 9/11, when the fuel truck on Route 4 had the accident that killed 5 people in the morning, we heard it at our house. The accidents on 4 are horrendous. And my concern is that they widened the road and they put a light there, just a fixed light. But if you put a traffic light there to help the traffic, you've got the problem of fuel trucks and freight trucks all night long, and even during the daytime. And it's just a dangerous place. And I think you'd mentioned, is there a turning lane? This is on a hill, and there's an obstruction of view. You can't really see people coming and going. I just think it's a little frightening. So that's really all I had.
Yeah, and there's some limitations to what we can do. Route 4 is under the state's jurisdiction, so there's very limiting things we can do, but we will ask the applicant to provide a traffic study of what the generation of trips would be from their development, and any impacts would have to get mitigated. So that's what we can do.
Well, thank you. I've seen far too many accidents here. It's a dangerous stretch of road.
Yeah, Route 4 is dangerous. We've had other applicants in looking for residential driveways, and you know, if the state keeps on providing them, there's nothing we can do as the town.
Well, thank you for looking into it.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Yes, sir.
Yes, Dave Hanson. I live on Route 4. So,
You're one of those.
driveways. My biggest concern is the 2 access roads. One of them, which is the nearest my driveway, is on a hill. And the second one is on a corner. And as that young lady right behind me would state, pretty good clip. To 600 feet visual, either way, that's great, you got it, but it's on the hill. And that concerns me considerably for this access. And the other concern I have is because there's a culvert that goes right beside him, right by my driveway. It's a seasonal brook, basically. And they got a proposed grading and drainage area, and I don't know if it's going to impact the drainage that I see now going through my property.
So the requirements that we would impose onto this subdivision is that they will not be allowed to put any more drainage out beyond their property than is existing.
Okay.
So they will have to contain, delay, hold any storm water so that it meets the outgoing quantity in the volume. So that's something we would require of the applicant.
Yeah, it's good, because the drainage in the springtime coming through there is pretty good. Floods a good deal of my property.
Again, some of that is the state's responsibility, and I don't want to pass the buck, because we're going to do everything we can to make sure that this is a safe subdivision, or the applicant's going to do everything they can do. And I would suggest that when we do talk to the state, or when you talk to the state about these driveways or accesses, they'll be looking at those. We can also request that a planning board member attend that with the state, and if we feel there's enough issues, we can certainly provide comment to the state about the roadways.
Yeah, it'd be nice if they just could consolidate the two driveways into one entrance and then split it.
Yeah, the issue with that is it bisects by a whole, this little river, and they would have to get across it.
Well,
there's only one driveway
Little
they'd have
River's
to.
to the westbound side of the second cul-de-sac, am I correct?
Or whatever the main wetland body is.
I think, if I may.
Yeah.
Little River is
Over there?
Oh, okay.
This is.
Thank you.
The river's on lot 21, this is on lot 22.
Gotcha.
Totally different area.
Okay, thank you. Any other public that would like to have any comment into the design review? Okay, seeing none, if you could just maybe state a couple of the questions here relevant to the wells and maybe the sizes of the homes that would be anticipated.
Sure, so we're actually aiming, some of these lots currently are less than 1 acre. We're actually trying to, this has more to do with market share, but trying to get the lots to be about 1 acre, but some of them may be 3/4 of an acre to 1 acre. So they're not 1/4 acre sizes, we're aiming for 3/4 to 1 acre size. Wells, so the state of New Hampshire has a formula that we have to use when we receive, apply for and receive state subdivision permitting. And it's based on the soils, so knowing where the very poorly drained soils are, other poorly drained soils, and then the other soil matrix on site is going to be important to know that. So we take the soils into consideration, we take the number of bedrooms that are anticipated, so it's assumed 4 bedrooms per house, some are 3, some are 4. And then the amount of water withdrawal. And we apply for a state subdivision permit where they look at all of those factors to determine whether or not your density is going to impact that site or not. With respect to the size of the homes, these are going to be just typical 3, 4 bedroom homes. I don't have square footages in mind. We're not looking for house placement currently or house designs currently. We're looking to generate a subdivision for future development. As far as Route 4, I was actually, doesn't happen very often, but I was actually on the survey crew that did the cross sections on Route 4, and I felt like a game of Frogger, dodging some of those trucks that were accelerating down the slope. So I know firsthand, maybe not to the extent that some of the abutters do, but how people travel through here. So I stated in my opening presentation, we are on scope to produce a traffic analysis that incorporates existing speeds. So we've got that in our scope, existing traffic volumes, AM, PM traffic volumes, what we're proposed to generate, and then take, AASHTO requires that we take the 85th percentile speed and take slopes of roadways into consideration. So AASHTO understands that not all highways are built the same. As people are accelerating down slopes or decelerating down slopes, up slopes, those site distances are extended out, they're projected out. Now DOT will tell you that they only require 400 feet. Once you get to 400 feet, they don't care about the rest. I understand this corridor pretty well, and so I've already put it in my scope to look at those speeds and how they affect site distance on the slope of the road.
So horizontal and vertical you'll look at.
That's right. Let's see, stormwater. This project probably won't trigger an alteration of terrain permit, but we have a policy in our office that all projects of this size and nature meet the alteration of terrain standards. So we're going to capture the stormwater, we treat it for nitrogen, phosphorus, and hydrostatic carbons. It's re-infiltrated in areas where that's appropriate to do, and then discharged, attenuated and discharged to the natural wetland system. We can increase flow off-site, we can increase volume off-site. So we have to take all of those into consideration when we do a drainage analysis. All off-site drainage that comes down into this wetland is considered. So we don't just look at this on a micro level, we look at how this wetland operates on a macro level, and that's part of the analysis that we conduct for submission to the board. With that said, does the board have an engineering consultant that reviews projects of this nature?
We do. We have, 2 or 3 that we'll often use.
Okay. Yep. Is there a list?
We can provide that.
Okay.
I don't want to say that in public, so. In case I don't want to name any names in public right now,
Yeah.
since we don't have them under contract.
Okay. So you don't have a consistent on-contract review? Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
We do not have a current on-call contract
Okay.
for engineering review
Okay.
services. Any other questions from the board?
Mr. Berry, could I just say one thing? I like the design of your westernmost cul-de-sac built out with the first lot off the driveway, not a buildable lot, but drainage area. But having walked Route 4, doing some conservation easement monitoring, it is very, very loud. And if that could stay treed just as a noise buffer for people who will be occupying the houses in the future, that would be probably welcome to them.
So what we can look at doing is applying, it'll probably be arbitrary in nature, but applying some sort of buffer along the front, and then maybe what we could do is split the stormwater between the 2 sides of the roadway, instead of having a wider stormwater, having 2 linear stormwater centers, and that way we can keep that buffer, or
Yeah.
keep some buffer.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna make one comment. It sounds like a lot of this is already covered in your approach, but the environmental impact assessment, especially in particular, the impact of the project on abutting properties, that's probably something we should consider with reference to groundwater and other things of that nature.
Right. I would agree. Any other information you want to provide or direction you'd think you might need?
Just any other, we typically cover the major studies, traffic, drainage, environmental impact. Typically I'll put together a fiscal impact analysis, so what this might generate for impact on the school systems, what it might generate for impact on your fire, police, other municipal systems. Are there any other studies?
Yeah, we have impact studies already done for those entities, and there's an impact fee.
Okay.
So I don't know that we would need that
Okay.
component.
All right.
We already assess a set rate.
Based on a study that was already conducted?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, for both fire, recreation, and school.
Dirk, can I just move this along to you? That was a comment that Ed made on the conventional build-out.
Sure, so again, just, I would make sure your conventional is accounts for our setbacks. Which, it says, this comment is that, looks like the 20-foot side setbacks are being utilized for measurement of contiguous area, but it's 50 feet is our measurement for contiguous area.
For sites?
Yep.
Yeah, for the main structure for the house, not for sheds and supporting structures.
Right.
So procedurally, per the state law, we can either continue the design review, which I don't see the need to do, or the board could choose to close the design review, and that puts us on the clock to start engineering and moving the project forward.
Yeah, that's up to you, if you feel like you need more input from us.
Not at this time.
Okay. Do we feel like we need any other design information from the applicant prior to his making a more formal application?
No, thanks.
Seeing none, then I would take a motion to close the design review.
Mr. Chairman, I move we close the design review application for case 18-005 DR from, is it Villicus Homes Incorporated?
Second?
Motion is second by Joe. All those in favor indicate aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you do have some additional questions relative to our regulations or anything, please get in touch with Joanna, and we could have a separate meeting or whatever is needed.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna move on to the next case, which is 18006 SUB, an application from Roscoe Blaisdell for a minor subdivision. The intent is to create one new lot from tax map 48 lot 2, and the total lot area involved is 54.1916 acres. It's located at 163 Stevens Hill Road in Nottingham. And someone for the applicant is present.
2 plus acres creating, that's correct?
Just over 2, it's 2.05.
You said there's no wetlands at all in it,
Correct.
and no steep slopes?
No.
Within the buildable area or the lot? It's hard to tell from this.
Within the lot, there's no wetland on the lot we're creating.
Okay.
Those steep slopes, though, I think on the back side.
Well, that's what I was
It's
wondering.
not 25% slope.
Okay.
Oh, it's not, okay.
They'll be building right next to where the test pits are. Put the pits so they work for a second.
Roscoe, I can't see even with my glasses on. So what is the distance in the topography? You see all these little lines? Is it 2 feet?
These are 2 foot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's much easier to
Thank you.
Sorry. We do have some large plans if you want some.
Can I ask you a question? This section here is the lot that you're doing, right? And is this a stone wall?
Yes.
So the stone
Not
wall
so
goes
scary.
right into the buildable area?
But the other one.
Yep. Yep, the stone wall's not property line, though.
No, I'm just asking.
Yeah, and that's not steep.
But
They
this,
won't be
When they
touching.
really run together.
okay.
You know, he's gonna stay within the field.
Different.
If you look at the other sheet that shows the topo,
This one,
it also shows,
That I can't hardly make anything out.
yeah, so
Sorry.
it'd be better to look at.
That's what he said. I'm looking.
My pick right there.
But you don't show where the house is gonna be.
I don't see any numbers anywhere.
The house will go right in here. The septic will go right here.
No, that's the distance.
Don't need to.
Oh, here we go,
I
382,
mean, he can put the house just
368.
right in that block.
Right.
He's gonna live there, he knows right where he wants it, and it's gonna be just above,
Oh, yeah.
septic.
68,
4 feet from there.
70,
I've done a lot of subdivisions, this is
72,
like,
74,
so
76,
good.
78, yeah, 2 feet.
Can't get much better.
So it's like 70.
So this being a new application, we do have to
Oh, yeah.
accept the application first. I just want to make sure that we've gone through, and Joanna, we've gotten all the materials, all the public abutter notices. And we received all the material from them.
And part of the land is under current use?
Yes, it is.
Here's the wetland here, but not really in the buildable area. Very poorly drained.
25 children.
Soil type, yeah. So it should be set back at 75
Right.
for the buildable envelope.
Yeah, coming 50 feet off all sides, so that rectangle within rectangle is.
Yeah, yeah, we were looking at this
Distance
Roscoe
from the very small.
because it's very poorly drained, which is a 75
And
foot.
it comes right to, this is, poorly. Yeah, very poorly.
Very poorly, so
Yeah,
that's
and that's,
75 feet.
yeah, the limit's 75, it's 125 feet.
Okay.
If the board feels comfortable that we have all of the information, I'd entertain a motion for acceptance.
Stephanie Moore.
Mr. Chairman, motion to accept case 18-006-sub as complete.
Second.
Motion and a second by Teresa. Those in favor indicate aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Gary, which was your vote? Unanimous. So now that it has been accepted, we can talk about any of the details. If there's any more explanation, but it seems pretty cut and dry.
Yeah.
I would like to open up as a public hearing. So as a process of the application, we hold a public hearing where abutters, public, anybody can come and ask questions if they've got comments. If they have things that for it or against it, we'd love to hear that from you. So at this point, if there's anyone from the public that would like to have comment, please do so. For a second time, anybody who wants to come talk to, for, or against this application. Third time, not seeing anybody, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the board, and any questions from the board we can ask of the applicant. If they're, whatever the pleasure of the board is at this point.
It's pretty straightforward.
I agree.
Enjoy these properties. The good ones.
I move that we approve the request case 18-006 sub from Roscoe Blaisdell for a minor subdivision on tax map 48 lot 2.
Second.
Motion is second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Those for it, please indicate aye.
Aye.
Those against? That's unanimous. Thank you.
I'm gonna give Sam something. I'm just gonna step up.
Yep.
Off.
Don't get spoiled though, Russell, it's not always easy.
Yes.
He knows that well, I think.
Oh, really small.
Okay, so we're at the point of we're end of our public hearings. It's before 9, so that's on 4 cases, that's good. We have public comment, any updates from the board? I'll go around the room and I'll start with Joe with board updates.
Yeah, we had our second or third master plan meeting.
I think our third.
Yeah, last night. Made some good progress looking through some of our homework, reviewing the action items from, or the action plans from transportation, the economic section, natural resources. I think those are the 3 that we hit.
Facilities, did you say
Facilities as well, yep. I actually think we made some pretty good progress on identifying things that we might want to modify based on process or progress that we've made, and got some suggestions that are going to be coming back to the planning board in particular, as well as some of the other boards that have accountability for some of those action items. So more to come on that soon. Anything else you want, not to skip Gary, but any other?
Well, we also shared with them the fact that we might have some money in the budget in 2019 to hire a professional planner, which would be wise, because if there are any questions on the data that is collected, we would be able to go to that person and ask him or her how they gather the data, and that there would be a professional response rather than we did the best we could kind of thing. Made more sense that way, yeah.
Oh, and there, sorry, one last thing. There was a recommendation. I know we had some conversation around how to allocate the, to the planner versus other line items within the budget. So we had some recommendations to just put it in one and then have comments tied to it. We might be past that point because I think we had passed along approval as long as we were under a certain amount, but if there's still time to.
Yeah, I was gonna chime in, and not to skip Gary again, but my information is, I met with Chris Sterndale, town manager, to kind of go through those budget items. He basically had indicated just give him what we need with the descriptions, and he'll figure out
Where it goes,
Where
okay.
it goes.
Where it goes.
Perfect. All right, I'm done.
Sure.
Yes.
Gary.
Stratford Regional's next commissioner meeting's December 6th, and they're gonna have a couple speakers. The topic is informative presence for inclusive community design and accessibility. So
What does that mean?
I'm not sure yet. But I'll let you know.
Okay.
That's a lot of trendy words.
I could barely say it, so yeah.
Word salad.
I noticed you were reading it.
I was. Other than that, the board had been looking for commissioners to be involved in the regional impact area of the regional board. And I'd love to do it, but the time is not there for me right now, so maybe in the future.
I think that's all I had, right, Joanna?
What about me?
You already had your say.
No, I was helping Joe out.
Oh, then it goes back to Joe, and then it's, all right.
Don't bring me into this.
Thank you. The Conservation Commission has been monitoring easement properties in town for which the town owns the conservation easements of. And part of the conversation tonight we had with one of the presenters is, what do you do with a open space subdivision? You have a HOA that comes in and monitors their open space. Well, Sam and I have been out to do Highlands, because in the history of the Highlands has not been an HOA. So the commission goes out every year. It takes 2 days to do the Highlands. There are 19 properties. You know, it's fun to do, but it just takes time. So certainly when future open space subdivisions come to the town, there's no way the commission can pick up any more properties.
So that brings into the same conversation that we started having, and I'm not sure that there's an answer or we'll get to tonight, but, you know, what does the town do relevant to all of this open space
Well,
that is either unmanaged? Maybe it's fine, maybe it just stays
I think
open.
most people just protect it, and if there's any violations, they'll report it, that kind of thing.
Report it to who?
Code enforcement, building inspector.
Do they have any enforcement action on open space that is
Privately owned?
privately owned?
Well, they do if someone on their property is doing something within the shoreline protection district that's not allowed. That's a state law, and we have our own regs that need to be.
Yeah, I think those, I think would be okay, but if there's some uplands that, I'll just use the example, if there's uplands that is very treed, what prevents that 1/20th of a person that has ownership into it to go out and cut 20% of the trees?
Because there are use limitations written into their deeds. You cannot do this, you cannot do that, and that's part of their deed.
Okay,
And
so
if they violate that,
Do
then
we
it's-
require that? Do we, the planning board, require that language in the
Yes.
HOA document? So we're gonna require the document, the HOA document, to be made as a part of our review.
I know that we did officially for other ones
Okay.
back in the day.
Is it HOA or is it within the deed? Because if it's
It's
within
in
the
it's in the deed.
deed, that's
restriction.
different than the
Or the
HOA.
open space part.
What?
Which some part of which could be used for recreation.
Right,
I
like
think
walk
20%.
trails or that type of thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Is it stated in the open space?
Yes.
That
He does.
that type of use is not permitted? Meaning it's within the town's jurisdiction to oversee how that open space is utilized?
It would be in the HOA's jurisdiction.
But that's not a town,
No, that's true.
I think it's
I don't know
I
if
think
it's
it's landowner to
enforceable.
landowner unless we have some sort of ordinance that gives us oversight.
I don't know that we need to, but, you know, we have a lot of these open spaces that have been now out there since we've approved it and we've had our open space ordinance. I'd just be interested to know, are they being managed, are they not being managed, are they just, are these homeowners associations even an association anymore?
I think, is it Garrison where Francesca Way is?
Right,
Is that the, area? I think somebody had gone into one of those conservation easement properties that's overseen by, Rockingham County Conservation District. And so they reported the violation to them.
okay.
Maybe that's one out of how many?
You know,
know anything of.
minor, you know, considering all the time that we've had these open space developments, I think we've done pretty well.
I think so, and I think they're really valuable.
People love to
Valuable
live in there.
land.
Yeah, they do. They love the open space.
Right. I just wanna make sure that they're protected somehow
Well, wouldn't,
in our current regulation.
it would seem to me that if I owned a lot that was connected to an open space, that I had some sort of ownership in part of a homeowners association, if somebody was violating, some other neighbor was violating the terms of the agreement that they agreed to when they bought their property, that would be, that would put me in a position to file a civil suit against them. So I don't think it's really in the town's auspices to be supervising this property, because the landowners all own it together. That seems to me to be the way that the property's protected. Not that it has to be monitored and observed all the time, because each landowner is gonna be looking at what's going on the piece of property that they have a vested interest in.
Yeah, I don't think the town should be owning these open spaces.
Right.
It's a matter of who's managing them.
Well,
No, we
and
don't
again,
own them,
I think the management is the responsibility of the landowners that bought into the deal in the first place.
But think about it, Buzz, if you take that 60-acre lot and you're the first house lot, all that open space is well behind you, it's like 5, 6, 7, 8 lots ahead of you. You're not really gonna be seeing a whole lot of what's going
No,
on around there.
but the next neighbor's gonna be seeing what's behind him, and the next neighbor's gonna be seeing what's behind him.
But in some neighborhoods, people don't even know who their neighbor is. How are they paying attention to what's behind them?
Well, that's what they're buying into when they buy a lot in an open space subdivision. They're buying into the fact that not only do they own their lot, but they have ownership of the open space.
I hear what you're saying, I just don't see, having been on this board and another one, and seeing neighbors responding about what's going on in their neighborhoods, that very much of that is happening. But I don't think we have any way of even coming up with an answer for this. I'm just saying, I don't think we should assume that the neighborhood is actually paying attention to the open space. To them, it's less than an acre of land, I've got my house, I'm in a good neighborhood with a good school, I'm good. That's the way I see
And
it.
that's why the association can be valuable, because now there's a kind of a meeting of the minds and.
Yeah,
and
but Dirk's
together.
point is that after 5 years or after the house turns over the first time, is there any real association left?
And that's the problem.
So, but what it really comes down to is the landowners knowing in their deed that they have an ownership in that open space. And that's really in my opinion, I know that I personally would be keeping my eye on what's going on there.
You're unique in that, I think.
We can't take on responsibilities that belong to private landowners.
I agree.
So
That's
Until
why I
it becomes a
said,
problem, if the town decides we need to have more town oversight and they want that to become part of our.
all I'm saying is I don't think we should assume that the
Sure.
landowners are doing that.
That's
And
fair.
and I know that there will be others like you, because I would pay attention to the land, but I can tell you that I know
I
they
agree,
don't
I
all.
agree that not everybody's gonna pay attention.
Right.
But there are gonna be some people that pay attention.
So let's do this with this potential subdivision coming up. Why don't we all do some homework in the next 2 weeks or month and read our open space, and just if we have some comments or questions, we can talk about those at a future meeting.
Yeah.
I haven't read them for a while, so
I haven't
maybe
either,
all of
so-
our answers are in there, so. Okay, Tony?
I forgot half of what I was gonna talk about.
Well, that's good.
That's good.
I don't have too much. The road study that we've been doing for the past, over the past year is gonna be done soon. Don't ask me what's in it for metrics, because I wasn't involved, but it is coming close to completion, which is nice.
Will that be a publishable document or some format of
I
report
assume
or
so.
something?
I mean, it's gonna help guide our road maintenance strategy. You know, it was sort of a data-driven approach to finding out what's really happening on the roads in town and how do we best maintain them. So that'll be done soon, last we were told. And also, there was a woman in the audience, and I forget her name, but she had dark hair, and she was the one that commented that the Little River was off on a
Sue
different.
knows her, 'cause she was talking
Yeah,
to her.
Therese Thompson.
Therese, there you go. She is again representing the town on the Lamprey River Advisory
Committee.
So,
Lamprey River Advisory.
yeah, I had to make sure I got the acronym right, so.
Gary writes it down, you have to use your fingers, whatever it takes.
Whatever works.
It's the high intelligent planning board.
So, yeah, apparently she represented the town in the past and had moved away and come back, and now she's back in that role again, so we have somebody experienced and knowledgeable in that role again, so. That's all I have.
Teresa?
Nothing.
I actually have a question for Tony. On Cooper Hill Road, the paving is done now.
Yeah, I haven't been down it yet, so.
Well, I've been down it once, but my
Okay.
question is, did the town of and you won't know the answer probably, but did the town of Barrington also tar part of the road, or does the road actually go way past, like, 150 yards past North River Road? Because they paved all the way up that first hill.
Yeah.
You go past North River Road, all the way to the top of the hill.
As I understand it, we were,
My understanding was that that was Barrington's land. They're the ones that always did the grading on that hill.
I don't know, I mean, we were paving, you know, re-engineering and paving our portion of it, so I assume it was to the town line. Like I said, I haven't driven down there.
And there's a difference in the way the paving was done. On what I consider the Nottingham side, the paving goes to the edges of the road. On that hill, there's berms, asphalt berms going up the hill. Just a question. I'd be interested in knowing that if it
What's
was,
the question?
if it was Barrington's property, Barrington's Road, did they do the paving or did Nottingham do the paving?
Well, yeah, we wouldn't have paid, if there is a portion of Barrington that's done, we wouldn't have paid for that. It's not legal. We can't.
So I would have to presume that I was wrong about where the road ends, and in the past, the grading, because Nottingham used to grade to the bottom of that hill, and Barrington graded the hill over.
Are you talking about the hill where it gets really narrow at the top?
Yep.
I think the line's right about close
Right
to the
about at
top
the
of the
top.
hill, I believe, yeah.
So is that what you said, there's asphalt berms?
Yep.
Does it seem like an erosion control measure?
Yep.
Is that bottleneck, that always makes me nervous driving through there.
I thought it was going up the hill. The line was.
I have only looked at it from a satellite image, but I was estimating that it was about where the top of the hill was, or roughly in that area, yeah.
Check it out. Turn on my Garmin and drive till the screen shows the town line, and that should close approximation.
Just a point of interest.
Yeah, yeah. Good question though.
Let's see how long this lasts with the plowing.
Hey, Buzz, oh, Joanna, do you have anything?
I do. year snuck up on me, and we have to get the schedule for the applications and deadlines and meetings and stuff out. I want to know how you all feel about how this year went. Up until this point, we haven't had really a bunch of cases all at once. But how did the board feel having 4 cases in one night? Do you want me to go back to the way we did it before, where it was 2 application deadlines per month? Or continue with the way it was done this year?
No, I think we got through those pretty quickly.
I think so too. So continue with 1 application deadline for 2 meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that because if they're, yeah, I like that because we can have that second meeting for other things.
That's a good point.
All right.
Oh, and you wanted me to remind you about the Google Calendar thing.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Good job.
Yeah. So, what Dawn does with the select board, she puts our meetings, on the Google Calendar and sends invites out through it, so it goes like right to my phone. And I have it, and I get reminded the day before and so on, so if that works for everybody, I think Joanna said she'd be willing to do it if everybody thought it'd be a benefit. I'm just absent-minded, so I like relying on my phone for stuff
vote
like
yes.
that.
It's a little ping.
Sure. Yeah, it just goes on the calendar on your phone, and you get a reminder that whatever.
I have it as a reoccurring meeting every other Wednesday. It already pings me, but
And that doesn't always work out, because sometimes there's
I
3
remember,
Wednesdays in
I remember, but I sometimes can't make it.
I have Google Calendar, so that works for me.
Okay, so for the majority of you that have it, yes, go ahead and do it.
I'm fine either way. I
Okay.
can double up on my alerts.
We go bing, bing.
That's how I feel every day anyway. All right, we commented out.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
I was gonna turn to Buzz to make a motion that we adjourn.
Go for it.
You're a voting member.
Go for it. Go for it.
Too late.
Sorry.
All right, motion and second. Those in favor, and
Aye.
we'll get you next time, Buzz.